Today I'm going to tell you the story of how, before the people we now call Aztecs built an empire that shocked the world, they claimed a place called Aztlán as their ancestral origin. They said they left a paradise following a god's command, searching for sacred signs. Many believe this legend as truth. Others think this story was meant to give meaning to a greater truth, that they were outsiders looking for a place to belong. So today I'll walk you through the legends, the debates, and a few wild theories, so you can decide for yourself. Was Aztlán the home of the Aztecs, or the most powerful, mythical origin story ever told? I'm Andrew, and here we explore the myths, legends, history, and mysteries that connect us across Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. Let's get into the story of legendary Aztlán. Much of what we know about Mesoamerican cultures comes from a type of book called a codex. A codex, plural codices, was a folded manuscript made from tree bark or animal skin, filled with drawings and symbols that told stories of gods, people, migrations, and battles. One of the most famous is the Boturini Codex, which says the ancestors of the Aztecs came from a place called Aztlán, an island paradise filled with still waters, white herons, and gleaming temples under blessed skies. Some say it was real. Others believe it was something deeper, a symbolic homeland, more spiritual than physical. But either way, the search for Aztlán has become something more, a mystery woven into myth, migration, and identity on both sides of the border. The people we call Aztecs actually never called themselves that. They were one of many different tribes that spoke the Nahuatl language. A long time later, Spanish chroniclers grouped these tribes under a single name, Azteca. Technically, Azteca refers to any group claiming descent from legendary Aztlán. But the people who built Tenochtitlan, the empire that left the Spaniards with their mouths hanging open, they were the Mexica. The meaning of the name Mexica is still pretty hotly debated. Some scholars believe it comes from the name Mexitli, another name for the Mexica's patron god, Huitzilopochtli. Others say it's tied to their homeland, Mexico Tenochtitlan, or that it refers to them poetically as the people who come from the belly button of the moon. The name Aztlán is usually translated as a place of the herons, or a place of whiteness, or a place of purity. It was said to be a paradise, an island of beauty, abundance, and peace. According to legend, 7 tribes emerged from a place called Chicomostoc, the place of the 7 caves. Some traditions say it was different from Aztlán. Others believe the 2 places were connected, or even the same place. It was said that these 7 Nahuatl-speaking tribes lived together in harmony. And those tribes were the Xochimilca, Chalca, Tepaneca, Acolua, Tlahuica, Tlacochcalca, or Matlatzinca, depending on the interpretation, and the Mexica. And you better believe I had to rehearse those. I am not that good. In many retellings of the story, the Tlaxcaltecas replaced the Tlacochcalca, largely because of the powerful role they played later in history. From this shared origin, the 7 tribes began their migrations south at different times, each following their own path and settling in various parts of what is now central Mexico. The other tribes arrived earlier, setting up city-states and rose to regional prominence. But the Mexica, they were the last to leave. You see, Aztlán wasn't just beautiful, it was sacred. The gods were close, the rituals were strong. And for the Mexica, one god towered above the rest, Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun, war, and sacrifice. He didn't just watch over them, he spoke directly to them. Some versions of the story say that the other tribes had grown comfortable in their worship, maybe even complacent. But the Mexica remained fiercely devoted, and that devotion would change everything. Of all the tribes, only the Mexica received a divine command from their patron god, Huitzilopochtli. He told them, leave paradise, leave everything. That their true destiny lay far to the south. But to reach it, they would have to wander. It's a story we've heard before in other times in other cultures. A people abandoning what they knew, following a vision, and trusting in a promised land. Like Moses and the Israelites, like every family who's ever left home, not because they wanted to, but because they had to believe in something better. And their God gave them something to look for, an eagle perched on a nopal cactus, devouring a serpent. Only then would they know where to build their new lives. Historians believe the Mexica started their long journey around the year 1168 CE. According to legend, they were the smallest and the poorest of the 7 tribes. And so they set off through harsh deserts and rugged mountains, facing drought, hunger, and rejection at nearly every turn. Other groups already settled and thriving saw them as rough, uncivilized, a threat, and highly unwelcome. But they kept going. Scholars today believe they may have passed through regions like Nayarit, Zacatecas, and Guanajuato based on language patterns, archaeological finds, and codices like the Bochurini. Their journey was not a straight line. They were chased off fertile lands, denied entry into cities, and forced to survive on the edges. But instead of giving up, they adapted. They fought when they had to. They prayed when they needed guidance. They became known for their toughness and for their deep devotion to their god Huitzilopochtli. Huitzilopochtli wasn't a distant god. He gave visions, signs. And finally, after more than 150 years of wandering, those signs led to a shallow lake high in the valley of Mexico, Lake Texcoco, where Mexico City is today. And it was there on a small island that the priests saw it. An eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a serpent. The vision was clear. The prophecy had been fulfilled. This was the place. Here they would build their city, Tenochtitlan. And yes, that very image of the eagle, the cactus, and the snake live on today as the seal of the Mexican flag. It's more than a symbol. It's a story, a memory, a claim made by Mexicans everywhere. That the Mexica, once wanderers, rejected by others, had found their place, and would go on to shape the destiny of central Mexico for many years to come. So where exactly was Aztlán? Some believe it wasn't just a story, that it was an actual place. Over the years, researchers have made serious attempts to find it. One intriguing candidate is Mezcaltitan, a small island town in Nayarit, Mexico. It's surrounded by lagoons and canals, becoming fully waterbound during the rainy season, matching descriptions of Aztlán as an island surrounded by still waters. Its circular layout with a central plaza and radiating streets also resembles the design of Tenochtitlan. Some scholars even believe the name Mezcaltitan could derive from Mexitli, another name for Huitzilopochtli, the Mexica's patron god. To them, that connection suggests Mezcaltitan might not just have been a stop along the way, but the actual homeland. Another contender is the legendary place called Chicomostoc, the place of the 7 caves. Many versions of the migration story describe 7 Nahuatl-speaking tribes, including the Mexica, emerging from this place. Chicomostoc has been linked to sites like La Quemada in Zacatecas and the Sierra de San Luis in northern Chihuahua, regions with natural cave formations that match the idea of ancestral emergence. And then there's the case for the American Southwest. Linguists have traced the Nahuatl language back to the Uto-Aztecan family of languages, which includes languages still spoken by indigenous people in Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Mexico. Similarities in vocabulary and oral traditions between the Mexica and tribes like the Hopi and Pueblo have sparked debate. Some of these stories include sacred caves, spiral paths, and ancestral journeys guided by divine signs, echoing elements of the Mexica's own origin story. While no location has been definitively proven, each of these places offers geographic, linguistic, and cultural clues. The search continues. For many, just the possibility that Aztlán was real and that we're getting closer to it is reason enough to keep digging. But what if it wasn't real? Some modern scholars, like renowned Mexican archaeologist Eduardo Matos Moctezuma, argue that Aztlán is best understood as a cultural metaphor and not a literal place. And yes, his last name is a version of the name of the Mexican emperor who faced the Spaniards when they first arrived, Moctezuma Xocoyotzin. The Spanish shortened it to Moctezuma. In English, somehow it became Montezuma, which has now been more associated with intestinal issues than the name of a powerful emperor. Popular Mexican writer and TikTok creator Juan Miguel Zunzunegui has weighed on this as well. He suggests that we may be asking the wrong questions, that Aztlán isn't just about where it was, but what it symbolized. Zunzunegui believes that the Mexica likely came from the northern deserts, what some scholars call Arido America, or the greater Southwest, and possibly as far north as Utah, and that as they moved south, they adopted stories and sacred symbols from other cultures to legitimize their growing power. Zunzunegui argues that once the Mexica established dominance, they rewrote history in their favor, erasing and overriding other records to ensure their version was the one that survived. Other scholars go a step further. Historians like Susan Gillespie, Miguel León Portilla, and Camilla Townsend suggest that the Mexica deliberately shaped the story of Aztlán to serve a political purpose, not just to remember their past, but to elevate themselves above neighbors and rivals. After all, they began as outsiders, poor, unwelcome, and often dismissed by older city-states. By reframing their origin as a divine journey from a sacred homeland guided by prophecy, they turned hardship into destiny. From exile to chosen people. A kind of superhero origin story used to legitimize their rise from the margins to the center of an empire. And then, of course, there are what people might call fringe theories. Some claim Aztlán was part of Atlantis, a lost continent swallowed by cataclysm and remembered through Nahuatl myth. The name similarity helps bolster this idea. Others insist it was a base for ancient aliens, pointing to supposed star alignments in the codices, or eerie parallels with Egyptian and Mesopotamian symbols. One theory says the ruins of Aztlán lay under Lake Chapala in the state of Jalisco. Another places them inside military restricted zones near the US-Mexican border, a lost chapter of ancient history supposedly covered up by governments, or depending on who you ask, the real powers that be. Are any of these true? Probably not, but stranger things have happened. Today, when migration and identity dominate the headlines, the story of Aztlán still resonates. Because it's not just about where you came from, it's who gets to tell your story. We now know the Mexica built one of the most advanced cities in the ancient world, Tenochtitlan. We know their ancestors likely came from the deserts of the north, part of a vast migration through North America, moving southward. Aztlán might not exist on any map, but it exists in memory, in identity, in art, in language, in story, on both sides of the border. That's the power of legend, not whether it happens, but what it continues to give us. Have you heard another version of the story of Aztlán? I would love to hear it. Drop it in the comments below, DM me on Instagram at AndyColonVO, or go ahead and send it to me directly by email at andy@andycancun.com. And if this story moved you or made you think, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to the Mysteries of Latin America and activate the notifications so these stories don't get lost and make it to another generation. Friend, mil gracias for watching. And until next time, adios.